All right. Well, how's everybody doing tonight? Okay. I don't know how to interpret that, but it kind of sounds ominous. Some bad days, tired, tuckered out, big meal, lethargic. And I get it. If I wasn't standing up and yapping, I might be dozing myself. Well, I'm so glad to be back with you. And if you're here for the first time, thanks for coming and being with us. You know, we're doing kind of our own thing here in the grown-up class. And what we've been looking at is a section of Scripture in Matthew's Gospel called the Olivet Discourse. There's a few of these sections in Matthew's Gospel where Jesus launches into a discourse. Probably the most familiar, of course, is the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7. But this is called the Olivet Discourse, a discourse that he gives from the Mount of Olives. That's why it would be called the Olivet Discourse. And we said, as we began taking a look at it Sunday morning in our Bible class, that it is one of the most misunderstood passages in all of the New Testament. And so we're actually on part 3 tonight. And so if you've got your Bibles, Matthew chapter 24 is where you want to be. And let me take just a few minutes to kind of bring us up to speed. I do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, for the benefit of those who haven't been here. Number two, for the benefit of those who have been here, because repetition helps remembrance. And so we're going to do that. Hey, Gary, real quickly, time tonight at the same time?
Same time.
Same time tonight, okay. So let's take a look at Matthew chapter 24. Let me remind you of the primary points in understanding this text. As I said, it's one of the most misunderstood texts in the New Testament. Most people really see, or I don't know about most people, but a lot of Bible-believing people see Matthew chapter 24 as all about the second coming of Jesus Christ. And it's not all about the second coming of Jesus Christ. It's partly about the second coming of Jesus Christ, but it's not all about the second coming of Jesus Christ. Let me remind you of the statement that launched this discourse. In verse 1 of Matthew chapter 24, if you'll look at that again, the disciples point out to Jesus the temple buildings. The temple buildings, it was a magnificent complex that had been expanded and made much more awe-inspiring and beautiful aesthetically by Herod the Great. It was really the jewel of that part of the world, and certainly the jewel of the Jewish nation. And so they draw Jesus' attention to the temple and its complex as they're heading east over onto the Mount of Olives, going down this Kidron Valley. They're heading up onto the Mount of Olives. And Jesus drops a bomb on them, I said, in verse 2. He said, if you look at that, do you not see all these things? Truly I say to you, not one stone here will be left upon another which will not be torn down. That's the statement that launches the Olivet Discourse. He makes that statement. The disciples ask a question in response to that statement, and Jesus begins to answer them. So the statement that begins it all is Jesus telling the disciples, yeah, you see the temple? Well, there's coming a time when it's going to be gone. There's not going to be a temple there anymore. That's what started it all. Well, then verse 3, they come back to him and they ask him a question. And we know by the question they asked what they concluded. Now again, to them it was unthinkable that the temple would be gone. That was the house of God. That's where God dwelt among His people. And so this notion of the temple being no more, the only thing that they could conceive of, and this is reflected in their question in verse 3, the only thing that they can conceive of is, well, if the temple's gone, everything must be gone. And so Jesus must be talking about the end of time, the end of the age. And that's why they asked this. Look at verse 3. And as he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately saying, tell us, when will these things happen? Now what he's talking about, when they say, tell us when will these things happen, he hasn't said anything about his second coming to them. He hasn't said a word. All he's told them is when they said, oh Jesus, look at the temple. There's nothing like it. What a magnificent and appropriate place for God to dwell. And Jesus just said, well, I'm telling you, there's coming a time when not one stone's going to be left on it. It's going to be gone. And so tell us when these things will happen. What is that? And then look what they added. This is their conclusion, obviously. Tell us when these things will happen, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age. That's an assumption that they've made. They've assumed that if the temple's going to be gone, it must be the end of the age. And so they're saying, okay, what are the signs of the end of the age? When you're coming back and the temple's going to be gone. They just put those two things together. Jesus didn't put those two things together. They put those two things together. Well, Jesus is going to answer them. And there's really two parts to that, since it's not going to happen at the same time. The temple's going to be destroyed at a very different time than when Jesus comes again. And so we know historically that's true. Now, I mentioned it a couple of times. When was the temple destroyed? The temple of Jerusalem. When was it destroyed? 70 AD. So it was about 40 years after Jesus said this. About 40 years after Jesus said, and there's going to come when one stone's going to be left on another, the temple was gone. And so it happened about 40 years after Jesus is having this conversation on the Mount of Olives. And it has never been rebuilt. And as I've said a couple of times, if you've been here, you know this, the temple platform is still there. It's a major part of the centerpiece of the old city of Jerusalem. But on it today is a 7th century Muslim shrine called the Dome of the Rock. That golden dome you've seen in pictures or on the news. And the temple's gone. The temple's been gone since 70 AD. So they're asking the question, well, when will these things happen? Now I said the key to understanding Matthew chapter 24, there's two verses to help you understand Matthew chapter 24. And if you get these down, you're going to be okay. The first one is what you tell me. What's the first important verse to understanding Matthew chapter 24?
35.
Verse 35? You're really super close. 34. 34. And I gave you two words to describe that verse. I said, call this verse in the margin of your Bible, if you write in the margin of your Bible, call it the what text? Time text. Outstanding. It's the time text because in verse 34, Jesus is going to tell them, and so we know, when this is going to happen. Tell us when will these things happen. That is, when is that moment when that building is going to be completely destroyed? Jesus says in verse 34, truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Jesus said it's going to happen during that generation. Now there are people, and I mentioned this Sunday, and I'll tell you it again, there are people who think this is all about the second coming of Jesus Christ. Even though, again, the statement that launched it had nothing to do with the second coming. The statement that launched it is the destruction of the temple. So many people believe this is all about the second coming of Jesus Christ. And that time text, they've stumbled over that for years. Because Jesus said, this generation will not pass away until all these things happen. And so they've had to come up with a different way to define generation. That's the only way they can do it. Because Jesus hasn't come back in 2,000 years. And so what they'll do is they'll say, oh, the word generation there, it means race. The Jewish race. And so there'll still be Jews around when Jesus comes back. So since there's still Jews around, and Jesus hasn't come back, then it fits this. And then other people say, no, the word generation really is talking about Christians. Christians will be in existence when Jesus comes back. Folks, that's not what generation, that is taking a crowbar to the text and trying to force something onto it. If you were here with us Sunday morning, we took a look at how Matthew uses the word generation, how Jesus uses it all throughout the book of Matthew. And when Jesus uses that word generation, it always means generation. Jesus always uses it to mean the people, his contemporaries. That's what it means. This generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Well, the very fact that we know it's a historical fact that the temple's been destroyed in 70 AD seems to confirm that. Jesus made a prophetic statement, and he's absolutely right. 40 years after he made this prophecy, it actually happened. And so it fits perfectly. But there's so many people so desperate to find in this the second coming that they try to find, oh, what generation can't mean generation. No, it always means generation. Jesus always uses that word, and it always means it's contemporary. Just let the text say what it does. Okay? So everything before verse 34 has to do with the destruction of the temple. It has nothing to do with the second coming. Now, I also pointed out that if you look at some of the things he says in those first verses before verse 34, some of the things that he says only fits the destruction of the temple. It can't even fit the second coming of Jesus. Like what? Like when he says, well, first of all, look at verse 15 again. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation which was spoken to Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. I told you to turn to Luke chapter 21 and verse 20 when we were looking at that, and it offers a little more clarity when Luke describes this. And Luke doesn't say, when you see the abomination that causes desolation standing in the holy place. Luke says, reports Jesus saying, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, that's the abomination that causes desolation. Luke said, then know that her desolation is near. Jerusalem's desolation is near. And he says, and so for that reason, those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains. If this is about the second coming of Jesus Christ, we've said, what difference does it make to try to run to the mountains? You're not going to get away from the second coming of Jesus Christ by running to the mountains. You're not going to get away from the second coming of Jesus Christ anywhere. So that doesn't make any sense if it's talking about the second coming, but it does make sense when you're trying to dodge a conquering army. And he goes on to say things like this: whoever's on the housetop must not go down, verse 17, to get things that are in the house. Whoever's in the field must not come back to get spoken. In other words, get out of town fast. When you see this, you'll know that the desolation of Jerusalem is close. Don't take time to pack a bag. Again, if this is about the second coming of Christ, that makes no sense at all. None. And then he goes on to say this, verse 19, but woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing babies in those days. And we said that's the second coming of Jesus Christ. What does it matter if a woman's pregnant? It doesn't matter at all. What does it matter if she has nursing babies? It doesn't matter at all. But it matters a lot when you're trying to flee from a conquering army in the first century. Being pregnant would make that very difficult. And having little babies would make that very difficult. And then he says, and pray, he goes on to say in verse 20, that your flight will not be in the winter or on the Sabbath. If it's talking about the second coming of Jesus Christ, that makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense at all to say, pray that it won't be a certain day of the week. Pray that it won't be a certain time of the year. What does it matter if it's the second coming of Jesus? But it matters a lot if you're trying to dodge the Roman army. Because on the Sabbath day, you could expect no help from any surrounding community in Judea. Things were shut down and locked down. And if it's in the wintertime, it was the rainy season. Roads turned to mud. Travel became extremely difficult. So Jesus says, pray that the flight won't be the Sabbath. So everything that he's talking about here in the first 34 verses then is all about what he said at the beginning. There's coming a time when not one stone is going to be left on another. The temple is going to be completely destroyed. And they said, tell us, when will these things be? That's the first part of our question. Now they added, as I said, Jesus never said, they just in their own mind assumed that it meant it would be the end. And so they added, and what will be the signs if you're coming in the end of the age? And Jesus is explaining, no. Oh, let me tell you when these things will be. Let me tell you when it will be that there won't be one stone, that the temple is going to be destroyed. And he's going to give them, he gives them a sign. Look, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, get out. Get out fast. Don't linger. Be praying that it's not going to be in the winter when travel is difficult. Be praying that it's not going to be in the Sabbath. It's going to be really tough for women in certain conditions like pregnancy or nursing children. It's going to be a very, very tough time. And it's going to unleash a terrible, terrible tribulation. Extreme hardship, devastation, and desolation. Okay, so the time text is important. It tells us that this first part of Matthew chapter 24 is all about the destruction of Jerusalem. Now last night what we did in verses 29 through 31, we actually looked at that because those words look so much like second coming language. But immediately after the tribulation of those days, verse 29 says, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the sky, the power of the heavens will be shaken. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds with power and great glory. What we did last night, if you were here, I said, the disciples would have understood this because they were the Jews. That language is very, very common in Old Testament language of judgment. We went to Isaiah, we looked at Isaiah chapter 13, and we looked at Isaiah chapter 34, and we looked at Ezekiel chapter 32, and we looked at Joel chapter 2, and we looked at Joel chapter 3, and we didn't even go to Amos chapter 8. And in all of those passages of the Old Testament, God prophesies about Him bringing judgment on nations, Egypt and Edom and Babylon and different people throughout history. God saying, I'm coming in judgment because of their rebellion, because of whatever reasons. God is going to deal with it, and He's going to unleash His sword. And each time in those texts in the Old Testament, this is the language we see. This language of astronomical chaos. The sun and moon not giving its light, the sky being rolled up, the stars falling. We saw it over and over and over again. Just good, normal, Old Testament, apocalyptic language of God coming in judgment. I said, remember, God's judgment, when we think about God's judgment, our mind immediately pops to the end of the age. Final judgment. But throughout human history, God has, there's been many times when God has unleashed judgment. Not universal judgment. There was that one time of universal judgment called the flood. But there have been other times of local judgment. Again, Babylon, Egypt, Assyria, Edom, Israel. There's been all kinds of local judgment. This is telling us that the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD during that generation is God unleashing judgment on the Jews. Is God unleashing judgment on the people of Israel because of their absolute rejection of Jesus Christ. They have completely rejected the notion that He is the Messiah. They have completely rejected the idea that He is the Son of Man, that He is the chosen one, that He is the Redeemer who has come to bring people into fellowship with God. They have resisted it, that the Jewish authorities have tried to destroy Him over and over and over again. And what is going to happen in 70 AD when God brings the Roman army into town and He levels Jerusalem and levels the temple, this language here tells us that is God's local judgment on them. And so it's the language of judgment that we see all the time. And when we see the language like in verse 30, the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky, again, that's language of judgment that we saw in the text, like Psalm 19 and verse 1. I think we looked at Psalm 19 and verse 1 last night. If we didn't, real quickly, let me read Psalm 19 and verse 1 to you. Psalm 19 and verse 1 says this. Isaiah 19 and verse 1. I turned to Psalm 19 and verse 1 and it didn't say what I thought it would say. But now here's Isaiah 19 and verse 1. The oracle concerning Egypt. So here's a statement about God coming to judge Egypt again. Behold, the Lord is riding on a swift cloud and is about to come to Egypt. The Lord is riding on a swift cloud. Now, not literally. That's the language of judgment. It means God's coming to judge Egypt. And it says, and the idols of Egypt will tremble at His presence, and the hearts of the Egyptians will melt within them. God is coming riding on a swift cloud. Same kind of language here. They will see the Son of Man coming on a cloud. That again, it's that language of judgment. What it is the destruction of Jerusalem was the judgment of God on the Jewish nation. And then we came to verse 31. This is where we left off last night. And by the way, verse 30. Remember, one of the things we said is that it would also be a sign, and this is what it says. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky. That's what the New American Standard says. Notice it says a sign. It doesn't say it's going to be a personal appearance of Jesus. It says a sign. And there's a couple of different ways that this can linguistically, grammatically be translated, and you'll find it in different translations. Some translations say the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, like the New American Standard, and it makes it sound like there's a sign that's going to be up in the sky. Others translate it this way. The sign will appear of the Son of Man in heaven, like the King James, the American Standard. And that fits the text and the overall meaning of the New Testament. when Jerusalem is destroyed, it will be a sign that the Son of Man is in heaven. In other words, it will be a sign that Jesus is ruling, that He is who He said He was, that He is the King of Kings, that He is the Lord of Lords, that He is the Messiah of God. The destruction of the temple will be that sign. It will confirm that the Son of Man is in heaven as judgment is unleashed. And then verse 31, and He will send forth His angels with a great trumpet, and they will gather together His elect from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other. Okay, what we have in verse 31 then is it's telling us that the whole fall of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple signals a permanent turning point in God's plan. The presence of the temple was an indication that God had a special covenant relationship with the Jews. And it's where He dwelt among His people, His Old Testament covenant people. But God's plan was never, it wasn't that God just had a heart for Jewish people. Never. That was never God's plan. From the very beginning, Genesis chapter 12, when God made the covenant with Abraham, God's plan was always universal. To bring all people into fellowship with God, to redeem all people from their sins, to give all people hope, to bless all nations. That was the plan. And so the destruction of Jerusalem, not only was it judgment upon the rejection upon Israel for the rejection of Jesus Christ, but it also signaled God's greater plan, His turning point, to reach out into all the world and bring people into His saved community, His kingdom, His church. And that's what you see here in verse 31. And He will send forth His angels. Yeah, but what about that angel talk? Well, keep in mind what the word angel actually is. When Jesus said this, when Matthew wrote this, there's not a word, there's not just a single word that is that simply means a supernatural spirit person that lives in the invisible, non-physical realm that we call angels. There's not a dedicated word for that. This word is a word that's oftentimes used to describe human beings. Let me show you a place where you can see that. I want you to turn to Matthew chapter 11. This is not uncommon at all. Matthew chapter 11. I want you to look at Jesus and His tribute to John the Baptist. Matthew chapter 11. And look what Jesus says about John the Baptist. In verse 9 it says, "Don't want you to go out to see a prophet? Yes, I tell you, and one who is more than a prophet. This is the one about whom it is written, Behold, I send my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare your way before you." Did you know that the word angel, the same exact word there that's translated angel in Matthew chapter 24, verse 31, is used right here in this verse? Can anyone guess what that word is translated here in Matthew chapter 11, verse 10? Messenger. The word angel just means messenger. And so context has to determine, does it mean an angel or does it mean a messenger? And so Jesus uses it here to describe John, but John is a messenger. Behold, I send my, it could be translated, my angel ahead of you. But we know it's not talking about an angelic being. It's translated messenger. I send my messenger to you. Turn over to Luke chapter 7. Luke chapter 7. In Luke chapter 7, when you get there, look down at about verse 24. Luke chapter 7, verse 24. And it says, when the messengers of John had left, now John's not called a messenger here, but John has his own messengers. And you know what that word is? Can anybody guess? It's the same word that's translated angel. When the messengers of John had left, He began to speak to the crowds about John. Now look at verse 27. There you'll see the same thing that we looked at in Matthew chapter 11. This is the one about whom it is written, Behold, I send my messenger. Look at Luke chapter 9. Look at Luke chapter 9. Look down at about verse 52. Look at verse 51. When the days were approaching for His ascension, He was determined to go to Jerusalem, and He sent messengers on ahead of Him, and they went and entered the village of the Samaritans to make arrangements for Him. Jesus sent messengers. That's the same exact word. It's the same word that's translated angels in Matthew chapter 24. Look over in the book of James, James chapter 2. James chapter 2. And look down at verse 25. As James is recounting the work of Rahab in Old Testament times, it says, in the same way was not Rahab the harlot also justified by works when she received the messengers and sent them out by another way? That's the same exact word that's translated angels. And so this word, sometimes it's translated angels, sometimes it's translated messengers. And so when we get to Matthew chapter 24, when we have that in mind, and it says, and he's going to send forth his angels with a great trumpet, and they will gather his elect from the four winds. I think the better sense there is, and he's going to send forth his messengers to gather the elect from the four winds. By the way, what does it mean to gather the elect from the four winds? What does the four winds indicate? The whole world. That's typical language to describe the whole world, north, south, east, and west. Going to gather the elect, that is God's saved community. That's what the church's mission is, right? Go into all the world, preach the gospel, take the message of salvation, and gather people for God from all over the world. That's the message of the church. That is our task as the body of Jesus Christ. And when Jerusalem fell in 70 AD, when the temple was destroyed, it demonstrated, it was this visible, permanent, concrete truth being spoken that is no longer, God's presence no longer is in a place, located in a building somewhere, and God's among a certain ethnic people. That God's presence never, and it never could be, he always just symbolically dwelt there, that God doesn't dwell in temples made with hands. That God is universal in his love for mankind and his seeking of mankind. And so, again, we go to verse 34, the end of time text, and we see all of this, everything it says before that is all about the destruction of the temple. So, I tell you the truth, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Understand Matthew chapter 24, get the time text down. And so everything that's been saying before this is all about the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. Now, the Olivet Discourse has not ended though. Because the disciples raised two questions. Now they thought it was all combined one, but it's really two. They said, when will these things happen? That is, when will the temple be destroyed? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? Well, that's very different. And so the second text that's important to understand the Olivet Discourse is verse 36. Now we call the verse 34 the time text. Do you remember what we call verse 36? Anybody? The transition text. Because now Jesus is going to transition to his second coming. Now he's given signs for the destruction of the temple. He says it's going to be in this generation. And it was 70 AD. History proves Jesus right, which doesn't surprise us. He was God. And he gave them signs. When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, get out of Dodge. Flee. Don't pack a bag. Hopefully it won't be on a Sabbath. Hopefully it won't be. Get out. Well, this is going to be bad. As God unleashes his judgment on Jerusalem. But now he transitions to the question about, what about the end of the age and your coming again? That transition takes us to verse 36. But. And that's how it starts. Now you might have, there are one or two translations out there that don't have that transition word, but it should have that transition word because that word is there in the original language. But. Of that day and hour, no one knows. Now, all throughout the New Testament, and we don't really have time to look at this, I don't want to take the time to look at it. That expression, that day and hour, that is a loaded expression in the New Testament. That day, an hour, the hour. That is language that is oftentimes associated with the second coming of Jesus Christ. And then, of course, contextually, we know that's exactly what he's going to be talking about. But it says, but of that day and hour, no one knows. not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father alone. For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like in the days of Noah. So it says that no one knows. Now that day and hour, the coming of the Son of Man, no one knows. The coming of the Son of Man ultimately, in ultimate, final, universal judgment, that judgment, nobody knows. Now, the Son of Man is coming in judgment during that generation on Jerusalem. And He knows that. It's going to be during that generation. And there's going to be signs when you see Jerusalem surrounded with armies, get out. But of that day and hour, the second coming of Christ, nobody knows. Now let me say something real quick about this. This is a question that frequently people ask. They go, how did Jesus not know that? Because isn't Jesus God in the flesh? Mm-hmm. Sure is. Fully God, fully man. Undiminished deity, perfect humanity, two natures together, undiluted, unmixed. And God knows everything. God is, you know the word that we often use to describe knowing everything? What's the word that we use? Remember? It starts with an O. Omnipotent means all-powerful. It's close. It's one of those words. Omnipotent, all-powerful. Anybody got another one? Omniscient. That's the one. It's omnipotent, omniscient, meaning God knows everything that there is to know. Everything that there is to know is constantly in His consciousness. And what's the third word? Omnipotent, all-powerful, omniscient, knows everything, and omnipresent. God is fully present in all space at all time. And so and Jesus is fully God, doesn't He know everything? And then we see Him oftentimes talking to people, and in the Gospels it tells us Jesus knew what was in them. He's a mind reader. And Jesus, his disciples are discussing something on the way, and Jesus goes, well, what were you discussing? Because He knew what they were discussing. Jesus knows everything. And so people oftentimes ask, well, how come Jesus doesn't know? And so I'm going to offer you an explanation. Okay? And I think this is the best explanation I've heard. And it makes the most sense. Jesus didn't stop being God when He came. And He didn't give up His divine nature. He took on human nature with His divine nature. And so that's important to understand. But it's important to understand He took on human nature. Now, with God, everything is all things that there is to know is constantly in His consciousness. We human beings are a little bit different. How many things can you have in your consciousness at any one moment? Do you know? Anybody want to hazard a guess? How many things at any one moment is in your consciousness? One. Now, things can pop in and out so fast that you might think you have a lot of things in your consciousness, but really you're only conscious of one thing at a time. And you know a lot more. You've got a lot more information stored than you even remember. I remember one time, not too long ago, I'm driving down the road, and I turned to this oldies classic rock station, back to my 80s days. And a song came on that I hadn't heard since my 80s days. I hadn't heard that song. I hadn't thought about that song. And I couldn't remember the lyrics of that song, and the song was in it. But I knew at one time, I knew that song. And so, for about the next 30 minutes or so, as I'm driving, doing nothing else, I'm trying to reach back in my, for lack of a better description, in my memory banks. And I'm trying to pull out the lyrics of that song. And I finally pieced it all together. It was back there. It hadn't been in my consciousness for 30 years, but it was back there. And so I had to finally work and will them into my consciousness. But that's just human beings. We have a lot of stuff back there, the way God has designed us, but we can only pull one thing into our consciousness at one time. I think that's the best explanation why Jesus didn't know. I think because he was fully human, although he knew all things, he could only, as a human being, have one thing in his consciousness, and I just don't think that he chose to will that information into his consciousness at the time. Now listen, if you disagree with me on that, and you say, no, Jesus just didn't know, then listen, I ain't going to disfellowship you if you don't disfellowship me. I don't think that's a real vital thing. I'm just helping you. I'm just giving you a possible suggestion because that comes up a lot. Hey, how come Jesus didn't know that? But the fact of the matter is, he didn't know that about his second coming. Now again, he knew when the destruction of Jerusalem was going to be, it was going to happen in that generation, and he knew what an important sign was going to be. When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, get out. He knew that. But of that day and hour, the second coming, for the coming of the Son of Man will be just like in the days of Noah. For in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. And they didn't understand until the flood came and took them all away. So will the coming of the Son of Man be. Let me tell you what Jesus is basically saying there. They've asked, after they said, when will all these things be? That is, when's this moment coming when the temple's going to be gone? And what will be the signs of your coming? Well, he told them when the temple's going to be gone during that generation, and what to look forward to so that they could avoid the destruction and desolation of Jerusalem. But now about the second coming, here's what his answer is. His answer to the question, what are going to be the signs of your coming in the age? Here it is. No signs. None. Now for a lot of Bible-believing people, that's earth-shaking. They've been talking, there's signs, there's signs. No, there's no signs. There are signs of the destruction of Jerusalem. But look what he says again. He says it's going to be like it was in the days of Noah. Those days they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving. Listen, people are going to be getting married. It's not going to be a zombie apocalypse before the coming of Jesus. Okay? It's going to be just an ordinary day. People will be going out to eat. People will be having weddings. He says it's going to be just like that. And it is going to be so fast. And it's going to result in separation of humanity. We're going to get to that here in chapter 25. There will be two men in the field, one will be taken, one will be left. Two women grinding the mill, one will be taken, one will be left. But it's going to result in this great separation of humanity. Now, again, he's coming back to that. And so look what he says then. And this is the key. So he tells them, okay, you can be ready for the destruction of Jerusalem. Now, it's not going to happen tomorrow, he said. There's some things that have to happen first. We talked about that on Sunday. And then a more specific sign, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, and it's going to happen during this generation, you can be ready for the destruction of Jerusalem. But when it comes to the second coming of Jesus, not going to be any signs. People ask me all the time. They look around and they see our culture that is becoming increasingly secular. And they see a government that is increasingly indifferent to any kind of respect whatsoever for the laws of God. They see all that. And they go, surely God's not going to allow this old world to continue much longer, right, Dan? And I go, I don't know. What makes you think that? Well, everything's bad. And I said, can you tell me where, if they're a real good friend of mine, I'll say, well, can you tell me where that's a sign of the second coming? Jesus says there's not going to be any signs. Listen, there's always been times in history where it's always been, the world hates Jesus. They've always hated Jesus. The world will always be the world. There's not going to be any signs. And so stop looking for signs. Now look what it says in verse 42. Now this is important. This is a point he's going to make over and over and over again now. Therefore, be on the alert. For you do not know which day your Lord is coming. You better be ready because there's not going to be any signs. That's important to understand. If there's going to be signs, you might can kind of do your thing and just be on the lookout. And when the signs start appearing, get everything together. But no. There are not going to be any signs. So be on the alert because you don't know which day the Lord is coming. Now look this is an image that Jesus uses more than once about the second coming. But be sure of this, that if the head of the house had known at what time of the night the thief was coming, he would have been on the alert and would not have allowed his house to be broken into. See that imagery? It's going to be like a thief in the night. Listen, how many here who have had a house broken into? Okay, I see a few hands. I've had my house broken into 3 times. Yeah, 3 times. And let me tell you what makes me most angry. Are you ready? This makes me most angry. Not once did they have the common courtesy to let me know they were coming. Can you believe that? Not one time did they have the courtesy to pick up the phone and say, listen, I'm coming to your house. Not once. That's stupid. Things don't do that. They don't give you a sign. They come unexpectedly. And that's the imagery that Jesus uses to describe what the second coming is like. There's not going to be any sign. There's a sign of the coming destruction of Jerusalem during that generation. But about the second coming, nobody knows that. He said, I don't even know that. It's going to be like in the days of Noah, no signs, normal days, weddings, going out to eat. Therefore, be on the alert, because you don't know when it's going to happen. There aren't going to be any signs. It's going to be like a thief. Verse 44. For this reason, you must also be ready. Okay, he's already said that. Verse 42. Therefore, be on the alert. Now he says in verse 44, for this reason, because it's going to be like a thief on that, you got to be ready. For the Son of Man is coming in an hour when you do not think He will. And Jesus is really going to try to get that point across to us. When it comes to the second coming, no signs. Be ready. Be alert. Okay. So He says it twice in verse 42 and 44. Be ready, be alert. Okay, I got it, Jesus. This must be a really, really important thing that Jesus wants to get across because He ain't done yet. So now what He does is He tells 3 parables, all designed to teach the same thing. You don't know when I'm coming. Be ready. All the parables are in this context, in this setting. A lot of times parables are kind of interpreted on their own, and that's okay. There can be principles that are reflected in the parable, but really the primary teaching of the parable is determined by the context and the setting. All 3 of these parables are in the setting of Jesus saying, you don't know when I'm coming, be alert. And so what He does, He tells 3 parables. Here's the first one, verses 45 through 51, the rest of verse 24. He talks about a slave who's put in charge of his master's house. Look at verse 45. The master's going to go away. And he says, okay, you're in charge of everybody. And look what it says in verse 46. Blessed is that slave whom his master finds so doing when he comes. When the master comes back, it's going to be a great day. Blessed is that slave. It's going to be a great day when the master comes back and he finds that the slave has been doing what he left the slave to do. Doing what he told the slave to do. You're in charge of everything. You take care of everything. You take care of everybody. Now look at verse 47. Truly I say to you that He will put him in charge of all his possessions. Now look at verse 48. But if that evil slave says in his heart, my master is not coming back for a long time. And then in verse 49, he begins to beat his fellow slaves and eat and drink with drunkards. The master of that slave will come on a day when he does not expect him. No signs. He didn't call him and say, hey, listen, I'll be back on Tuesday. He didn't send a messenger ahead saying, listen, I'm going to be back next week. He says, the master is going to come back at a time when he doesn't expect, an hour which he does not know, and will cut him into pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The master is going to come back. But this wicked slave says, oh, he's gone for a long time. He's not going to be back forever. I'm going to live the way that I want to. The master is going to come back unexpectedly. Now, if the master came back and the slave was left doing what the master left him to do, It's going to be a great day. But if he wasn't doing what the master left him to do, it's going to be an awful day. So the point is, be on the alert. You don't know when Jesus is coming back. If he comes back and he finds you doing what he left you to do, it's going to be a great day. And if he comes back and you're not doing what he left you to do, it's going to be an awful day. Okay, Jesus, I got that. Thank you. I'm ready to move on. Jesus goes, I'm not ready to move on yet. You got to get this. And so he tells a second parable. And the second parable, as he continues the thought in chapter 25 now, the second parable is the parable of the 10 virgins. One of the most familiar parables in all of the New Testament. And you know what it's about, don't you? It's about 5 who prepared and were ready for the bridegroom to come, and 5 who were unprepared. And it was a great day for those who were prepared, and it was an awful day for those who weren't prepared. He uses a bunch of the imagery of a first century Jewish wedding ceremony. And part of it, how it worked in the ancient world, was basically when someone would get married, when they would kind of contract a marriage, and the husband would, the husband-to-be would, there would typically, they would add a room onto the existing family structure for the new bride and the husband and the new bride. And so oftentimes basically what the husband-to-be would say to the wife-to-be is, I'm going away to prepare a place for you. When I finish preparing the place, I'll come to you and receive you to myself, and where I am, there you'll be. Now that sounds kind of familiar. That's the language of Jesus in John chapter 14. And then Jesus says, in my Father's dwelling, in my Father's house there are many rooms. They understood that imagery. There's room for everybody in my Father's house. And I'm going to come back. Well, sometime, and what would happen during, I won't get into all the details of the ceremony because we're not there, but there would be waiting for the arrival of the bridegroom to come and to escort his bride back to the family home. There'd be partying and everything going on. And the friends would all go out, and there would kind of be a torchlight procession leading them in to the house. And so the point of the parable of the 10 virgins, most of us probably know it well enough that 5 took extra oil because they didn't know the bridegroom could be delayed. And then 5 didn't. And then when finally it came out of nowhere, at midnight there was a shout, behold, the bridegroom come out to meet him. Those virgins rose with the trembling lamp, and the foolish one says, give us some of your oil, our lamps are going out. And they said, no, we don't have enough for you. And they went scrambling to try to find it. By the time they found it, it says, while they were going away to make the purchase, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the wedding feast. The door was shut. Later the other virgins also came and said, Lord, open up for us. But he answered, truly I say to you, I do not know you. And then look at verse 13. Verse 13 is really important. It's the same point Jesus has been making the whole time. Be on the alert then, for you do not know the day nor the hour. You don't know when I'm coming back. You've got to be ready. So again, no signs about the second coming. All the sign stuff, that was about the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. She says about my second coming, nobody knows. It's going to be like it was in the day of Noah. It's going to be an ordinary day. It's going to be like a thief in the night. You don't be alert, be ready. And then he gets down to verse 14. Okay, Jesus, I got it. 2 parables that help me understand you. I got to be ready. And Jesus basically says, nope, we're not leaving this subject yet. You think Jesus is trying to get an important point across? I think he's trying to get a rule. He won't get off this. He won't stop. I've heard, what we say to our parents, they just keep drilling the same thing into us, and we just get sick of hearing it when we're young. And y'all are looking at mom and dad thinking, Dan's saying that he thought that about you. You thought about your parents too. And your kids thought about you. We all just over and over, the same thing over and over and over. Listen, we need to hear the same things over and over and over. We need to hear the same things over and over. And That's what Jesus being a good parent here. Listen, you better know this. You better hear this. You don't know when Jesus is coming back. You better be ready. It's going to be a great day if he comes back and finds you doing what I left you to do. It's going to be an awful day if he comes back and you haven't done what I left you to do. Then we get the parable of talents. What's the parable of talents about? Well, it's about using your talents. No, it's not. Not really. Kind of, sort of, in a way, you can use it to describe that because God's left us to do. Use our talents and abilities to glorify and honor Him. Absolutely. But a talent is a sum of money. A talent is a big old sum of money. And so what you have here is a man who goes away, and he has 5 important people in his house, and he distributes a lot of his wealth. And he has an expectation that they're going to take that wealth and use it for his benefit while he's away. And so 2 of them did, and 1 of them didn't. He expected all of them to do that. That was the task of all of them. And look what it says in verse 19. Here's the point of the parable. Now, after a long time, the master of the slaves came and settled accounts with them. After a long time. Don't know when he was coming back, but after a long time he came back and accounts were settled. And he called them all into account, and 2 of them, he came back and he had found they had done what he left them to do. They had used that, and they had increased his wealth. They had enriched him. And then 1, and of course both of those, it was a great day. Well done, good and faithful slave. You'll be faithful over a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Enter the joy of your master. And then he gets down to the 1. Verse 24, the one who had received the 1 talent came up and said, Master, I knew that you were a hard man, reaping where you didn't sow, gathering where you scattered no seed, and I was afraid, and I went away, and I hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours. He had a good excuse. He got to have a good excuse for not doing and not being what the master left him to be and do. And the master said, verse 26, you wicked, lazy slave, you knew that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I scattered no seed. You ought to put money in the bank, and when I arrive, I will at least receive my money back with interest. Therefore, take away the talent from him, give it to the one who has 10 talents. For everyone who has more shall be given, and he will be given abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have shall be taken away. Throw out the worthless slave into outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. All 3 of those parables are designed to teach the same thing. Jesus, what are going to be the signs that are coming in the end of the age? No signs. It's going to be like a thief in the night. It's going to be like it was during the days of Noah. Be ready. Be alert. The master may be away for a long time, but the master's going to come back. And he better find you doing what he left you to do. He better find you being what he left you to be. If he does, it's going to be a wonderful day. If he doesn't, it's going to be a bad day. Now, he's continued the Olivet Discourse in verse 31. We're going to stop right here. And we're going to take a look at the judgment tomorrow. Because now in verse 31, after he says, look, you be ready, because the Son of Man is coming back. When the Son of Man comes back, what it's going to usher in is judgment. There are a lot of wonderful people that think Jesus is going to come back, and there's going to be this period of time on earth, like this 1,000 years, and people have another opportunity to obey the gospel and all kinds of stuff. No, that's really not what's going to happen. That teaching comes from a misunderstanding of some things in Scripture. Well, the Bible teaches that when Jesus comes back, it's going to bring judgment. And that's what he says here. But when the Son of Man comes in glory, verse 31, with all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne, and all the nations will be gathered before him. He will separate them one from another, as the shepherd separates sheep from the goats. There's coming a time he's coming back. And like the master in verse 19 of chapter 25, and after a long time the master of the slaves came back and settled accounts with them, Jesus is going to come back and he's going to settle accounts. Be ready. No signs. Matthew chapter 24, verses 1 through 34, it's not about the second coming of Christ. It's about the destruction of the temple of Jerusalem. It's going to happen during that generation. There are going to be signs that they can avoid the destruction and desolation. But when it comes to the second coming, no signs. So be ready. Folks, be ready. Be on the alert. I know it's been 2,000 years, but the Master's coming back. Be ready. Hope you'll be back tomorrow night as we continue to look at the Olivet Discourse and we start looking at that judgment day of Jesus Christ. I'm looking forward to the rest of chapter 25. I hope you are too. Thanks a bunch for coming and being with us.